John Conyers Jr. is here, and you recognize the name. His dad, a civil rights icon and the longest serving Black member of Congress, so it's John Conyers III, JC3.
That's me.
That's you. He has a new book. Not only does he have a new book, but it is also Juneteenth that we are marking today. So thank you for joining us. Let's talk about all of it, shall we, sir?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you very much. So, how are you marking Juneteenth this year?
Juneteenth is obviously a special day. My family is from the South. My father was the first generation to be raised up north. So for me, Juneteenth, resonates deeply. When I leave this interview, I'm going to go be in the community and with the people celebrating this holiday and what it means to folks here in Detroit.
John, I had some folks say, it doesn't feel the same this year. Number one, the government's not behind it. The why, they're cutting back all the DEI initiatives. Corporations are pulling back as well. Have you felt that? And look, I think we should be concerned about it, but that should not preclude us from marking and actually celebrating the freedom of our people.
Yeah, I don't feel that the people that aren't aligned with us, them not celebrating something that if we look at their history, they probably didn't want to happen anyway. Like I don't look at them not supporting it as a reason for us to not celebrate and be bold and be loud and proud about what this day means. So, for as far as I'm concerned, and the folks that I'll be going to be in community with later are concerned, this day is still just as significant as it was last year and all the years prior.
As I mentioned, your dad, John Conyers Jr., is a civil rights icon, the longest serving Black member of Congress. Worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There's a picture of him on the cover of Jet magazine, which is just fascinating to see here. There it is on the phone trying to do business. The nation's sixth, it says, gets sixth Negro. Now, this was back in the day.
Yeah, this is 64.
1964, before you and I were born. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So, what would your father think about today? And I wonder, look, we got this Juneteenth holiday after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had passed, obviously. And I wonder what your father would say about today and working alongside of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, I can tell you what he would say. He would say it to me all the time. He looked, even though they were peers, right? That was one of his closest friends. He looked up to, MLK. They're literally 5 months to the day apart, born the same year. And so my father looked at him as a hero. My father often said he's the greatest human being to ever live. And so, that is how he felt, how he thought about his friend, colleague, and an icon.
Mm-hmm. Your book, can you hold the book up? So, because I want everybody to be able to see the book, My Father's House, an ode to America's longest serving Black congressman. What's the inspiration behind that book?
Well,
Obviously, your dad.
well, yes. So often I'm glad you asked it that way because normally people ask me, what made you want to write a book? And the answer is I had no desire to write a book, right? This book stemmed from, my father passing away while he was working on a memoir, something that, we had been urging him to do for quite a while. And so ultimately, what I talk about in the prologue is that, whether it's, MLK, Malcolm X, JFK, or RFK, oftentimes there's no way back in those times they could have foreseen how media would, transform and take over narratives and legacy. And so the impetus for me deciding to take up the mantle and finishing this work was that I wanted to set the record straight and tell the story of who my father was, especially given all the things that happened at the end of his career. And so it was important for, me to write that down and get that etched and sewn. So whoever decides to write a book about my father, a year from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, it's refuting what the family had to say about John Conyers Jr. It's not, some person saying what they thought, and then we have to, you know, be on the defensive and try to correct the record.
Yeah, so you wanted to get the narrative, the real story out there first before others tried to whatever
100,
it is they might want to do with your father's legacy, right?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So your dad passed in 2019.
Yes, sir.
Um, what would he think about what's going on with the Congress today? Because they appear like they have lost their nerve and their testicular fortitude. Let's say that. So, what would he have to say? Because your dad was a fighter, and he said what he said. What he said, if you know what I mean. What
Hmm.
would he think?
He would be very disappointed. I think he would be disappointed in, quite frankly, both sides, except for maybe a few folks that are fighting strategically. I think, you know, uh, his issue was always that there's too much money in politics, and I think that, to bring it back to your point, it's reflective in the lack of testicular fortitude by members on both sides of the aisle. Um, One, from the Republicans pledging fealty to Donald Trump, and two, from Democrats, just not doing enough, not going far enough, and relying on, consultants to tell them how to talk to people instead of just being human beings and going to talk to people and speaking for the least among us and fighting for the least among us, and trying to bring those issues and galvanize those folks to the polls.
Hmm. Listen, he was around long enough to, the first Donald Trump presidency.
Hmm.
I think he worked alongside, well, not alongside, but he worked in, well, sort of. They One was in Congress, one was in Senate. The Kamala Harris, who ran for president
Hmm.
recently. Did he have any? He's worked with everyone from Kamala Harris. He got to see the change in the Senate and the Congress, and I think we have a picture of him. I think it's with Shirley Chisholm. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, and you got to like sit on his knee or just watch
yeah.
from not even afar him work with all of these folks. So he would not be afraid, I believe, to confront and combat what is going on right now.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I think so. When I used to go to the Hill, and um, specifically the Rayburn building, where most of his committee meetings were on the judiciary, Republicans would even stop me and say, I may not always agree with your father, but he's fair, he's respectful, and he lets me. I mean, he's firm in his beliefs, but he's lets me express what I have to express, and I always appreciate that about him. But my father wouldn't be afraid to speak up at all. I mean, that was his political legacy and his political record is one. Whether you look at reparations, whether you look at the MLK holiday, you look at Medicare for all, he has a track record of doing the thing that nobody else is willing or wants to do, and putting that on the record so that even if he, case in point, even though he's not here, those issues are still issues that are uh, timely and relevant. And he did it before folks had the courage, or most anyone else had the courage to do it, or he wouldn't have been the one to introduce the legislation.
Does it feel like they were just built different back then?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so.
I
I'm.
mean, seriously, think about the stuff that they had. But people are afraid now. Before this past weekend, people were afraid to even get out and protest. People are afraid to speak up against this administration because they just want to preserve, their I got to pay for my Mercedes, so I can. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And back then, they had everything to lose and a lot fewer comforts and a lot fewer, especially financial comforts, and they didn't care. I mean, they cared in a way that made them not care about you, if you understand what I'm saying.
I mean, I think it's everything you're saying, but I think it is also that most of us grew up with the rights that they fought for. So there's a lack of
Mhm.
understanding fundamentally that this stuff could go away. And so one thing I've said on during, like, in conversation on my book tour, is that I didn't inherit money, right? I inherited rights. And so for me, I look at myself as a generational bridge. And my responsibility is to help folks understand why politics and these things are so important. And, the material things, yes, they're byproducts of having these rights. But if the rights go away, right? If you're unwilling to sacrifice to maintain these rights, then all that other stuff that you like and you think is important and you value will also go away.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way of thinking about what Juneteenth means is
Mm-hmm.
understanding that this can go away. And if you don't believe it can go away, look at what happened with Roe v. Wade. Look at what
100%.
happened with affirmative action. Look at what's happening with diversity, equity, inclusion, because people have gotten so used to the finer things or the nicer things, or just we've become complacent and we think that the world is just going to continue the way that it is, and that's not necessarily so.
No, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's just not how things work. I think we have been lulled into a state of comfort and passiveness, that one isn't sustainable. And while you are, asleep at the wheel, so to speak, there are folks that are working, like the folks that wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade. They worked at that for 50 years. I think part of the challenge is getting folks on the progressive side of the aisle to understand that it's not about fixing it for 2024 or 2026 or 2030. It is about planning for 2055, right?
Yeah.
That's fundamentally what you have to do, and that's what was being done. That's how you got Roe v. Wade overturned. You have to be strategic in a way, um, that most folks aren't. And I think the last thing I'll say on that is that, like, we don't go back, and when we talk about MLK, we don't go back and we think of I have a dream. We don't think of where
Hmm.
do we go from here, right? Which is
Hmm.
a plan for what's next. So
Um, have have Black people gone soft?
I don't know that I don't know that black people have gone soft as much as we've become disconnected. I hate the phrase black excellence. It nothing. I don't ever want to be associated with black excellence. Black excellence is just a 2025 version or the 21st century version of the talented 10th. I think black folks in general, we have this thing where we reach the highest heights and we want to separate ourselves from the black folks that are the least among us, when in reality those are the people we should be standing with and fighting for the most, because most of us came from that place. And so that's something that, like, understanding my family's history, I've never forgotten that. Knowing how, my mother and father had quite a large age gap, and so there were times where I talk about in the book, I would be with President Clinton, and then I would go to my mom's neighborhood, where she grew up, and be with my cousins and my grandmother, and there's an abandoned building on that block, abandoned house on that block, right? So I never lost sight of, what the reality of being black in America was. I never wanted to separate myself from that. I think it is important for successful black folks to understand that they come from that, they emerge from that, and it's important to lift folks up that are still in that situation.
Man, you said a word right there, but honestly, I'm not sure people get it,
They
because I just work. You said they don't.
they don't, but it's okay. I mean, listen, that's why I'm doing the work.
Well,
That's what the work's for.
okay, because I see people and they talk about, and then they're scrolling through their Instagram and they're taking pictures, and I'm like, what are y'all doing? And not to be chastising people, but because I don't always do the right thing, 100% of the time. But I do believe in my work and in my life that I've always been willing to sacrifice something. I don't see that. And again, I'm speaking in generalities here because some people are, but I don't see people who are willing, as we saw with your father, with Dr. King, with Shirley Chisholm, and on and that generation. I don't see people who are as willing to sacrifice something when they have way more luxuries and way more financial security than the folks back then.
Correct. Yeah, they're not willing. Yeah, yes, that is precisely it, right? I think there is this idea that gaining. Let me restart this over, right? So when we desegregated, we somehow it became ingrained in us that having success in white systems was the pinnacle, or that, like, respect to Barack Obama becoming the first black president means everything had changed. When in reality, there's so much more to be done. It's not one black president; it's 20, right? It is understanding that I make X amount of dollars and then I put forth those dollars to fund candidates so that we have a voting block. It's not just a congressional black caucus in title. It is a congressional black caucus in action that will block legislation that is harmful, that Nancy Pelosi wants to put forward and says, hey, we got 56 members. You need our vote to pass this legislation. So unless there's something in that, right, then we're not going to let this go forward. But black candidates are not primarily financed by black people, and thus there is no black agenda. And so when we're talking about losing our way, it is because we have subscribed and we're defining our success by white standards when like that shouldn't be the thing. We should be defining our own standards, having our own metrics, and funding our own candidates so that and stating an agenda so that we can do the things and have the things that we com- complain about.
Okay, you mentioned desegregation. Do you think that that should have happened? Do you think that we should? You're not saying we should still be segregated in
No,
a
no, no,
sense,
no,
are
no.
you?
I'm not.
There
No,
are
I'm
folks
not.
who
I'm not.
believe
I'm,
that,
no, I'm. Yeah, there are folks that believe that. I
that
think.
believe that and don't assimilate.
Well, yeah, I think desegregation was only harmful insofar as there is not an understanding of how to utilize the tools of the system to enhance our freedoms. It's not harmful. Just it's not just inherently harmful. I don't think that. No, at all. Not at all.
You don't, not at all.
No. Desegregation was a great thing for everybody. It's good. It's really, really good.
I'm glad you. I'm glad. Thank you. I'm so glad that you said that. So then, what? Then moving forward, what happens? Because everyone, a lot of folks seem to be wounded now by the whole Kamala Harris of it all, and people are like, well, and then now you have Donald Trump back in office, so people appear to be wounded. Black women are saying, I'm tired. Or if you
Rightfully
say
so.
something like, well, we're going out to the protest, and they're like, oh well, what are y'all having for dinner? Like, I'm not going. Do you think that people should get out there and protest?
I'm not a
We have 5
protester.
million people
I'm
out
not a protester.
recently.
Respectfully,
You wasn't?
not a protester. Not. I respect. I think it's a necessary part of the process. But listen, we live in a capitalist society. I am not inherently a capitalist. I'm a capitalist because that is the system that I live in. I understand
Hmm.
fundamentally that like whether you're a socialist, whether you're a communist, or you believe in socialism, communism, or any other ism, that like everything requires capital, whether you are a capitalist or not. You need money to fund the movement. My primary focus is on the fact that there's only one Don Peebles, there's only one John Rogers, there's only one Melody Hobson, right? And there's only one Ryan Wilson at the gathering spot. These folks have wealth, but there's only so much of that they can use to finance candidates. We need more folks that look like you and I, that are on the right side of history, that are going to invest in and fund candidates to put forth people that are going to do things on behalf of Black folks in America, right? And so I personally am not concerned with protests. I'm concerned with organizing folks to aggregate capital, not for personal enrichment, but for investment in Black businesses, and Black candidates and Black issues to raise awareness, to set an agenda, a policy agenda that we can force to be enacted. That's my case.
Boycotts?
Boycott,
Boycotts?
boycott. Listen, Target's hurting. That's from what I understand. Target's hurting. So boycotts work, which shows you that people understand and respond to financial pain both
So
ways.
I got to tell you, let me tell you what happened this morning. So I was getting dressed and I didn't have a razor, and I asked my husband. I said, "Do you have a razor?" And he said, "Yes." And then it's the ones that you get at Target, or but you can get them online.
Okay.
And I said, "Did you get these from Target?" He goes, "No, I got them from Amazon." But is that just as bad? He goes, "Where are we going to buy
Yeah.
razors?"
Listen. That's the catch
That
twenty
happened
two.
this morning.
That's the catch 22. We can boycott Target, but it's very difficult to boycott Amazon. It's become such a regular part of our lives. Um, but that guy is muting free press, and he's supporting a person that's doing great harm in the White House. And so, I
What do we do? Then what do we do? Because you can't, I mean, can you boycott everything? We say you can't boycott everything.
I
But
don't I
back in the
agree.
day, my point, John, if I can call you John or
Yeah,
JC3, my point is that they did back then.
they
They
did.
look, they walked. They walked to work. They jumped in each other's cars and they carpooled. They did not get on the city bus. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? But we're like, oh, well, you mean I can't get my Amazon?
Well,
What do I?
but they were in greater community, right? They knew
Yes.
each other. Like, we are in a place where this thing, right? This thing separates us from one another. And so we're not in community to the extent that like we should be to be able to make those things happen. Like, for example, I'm in Detroit. My closest friends live in New York. So like, who am I going to carpool with? Like, this is just the reality. I could walk.
John, you got two legs. I'm sure you
I
got a
you,
bicycle somewhere.
fair enough.
Stand by for a word from our sponsors. Today's Lemon Drop is brought to you by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's summer, campfires, late night conversations. People are swapping stories. But lately, One group is trying to control the whole story, claiming that the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation and pushing their religion into classrooms, into courtrooms, and even into our doctor's office. In Arizona, voters just protected abortion rights in the state constitution, but politicians are trying to undermine it anyway. Things like this are happening all over our country. This isn't about personal beliefs, it's about power, and it's all happening under the banner of Christian nationalism. That's where the Freedom from Religion Foundation comes in. They have been defending church state separation since 1978 in the courts, in the schools, and wherever religion tries to take the wheel. If you believe government should serve everyone, not just the religious right, join them. Go to ffrf.us/freedom or text Don to 511-511 and become a member today. Just go to ffrf.us/freedom and text Don to 511-511 now, because the only story that should run this country is ours, not theirs. Text fees may apply. But you do have a bicycle, John.
I have a bicycle.
So, right. And you may not be near your closest, but I'm just saying, I'm using that really just to show that there's always a way to do it, but we just haven't figured that out. And, I don't really know what the answer is too, because sometimes, I'll say, well, look, I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to eat at this place. I got to do something. But it's tough in these times because you do want to, I believe that economic power is the key, as you said, to fixing these things, because money is really the only color that many people care about.
Yeah. I mean,
That's the only color that I think that the Bezoses of the world and all the Target, whoever owns Targets, and the Waltons of the Walmarts and all that, I think the green is the only color they really care about.
100%. I mean, even this country, right? Like, it doesn't respond to like what it should do. If that's the case, they would have taken accountability for slavery and a host of other things, right? But when you have economic standing, when you own enough land, right, to force them to have to come to you to get a project done,
Yeah.
when you have that type of position in the world and you're organized, then you can say, listen, okay, we can cut a deal, but I need X, Y, and Z to happen.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, unfortunately, that's how it works.
Yeah.
So
And you're
the game is the game. You got to play it.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, Target is hurting. I see them reaching out to a lot of people to try to get support and trying to figure out exactly what they could do. But, Target is just one in many. A story about your dad. I know, I'm sure, has anyone ever asked you this? A story about your dad that you've never told publicly.
I don't know if I put it. I think I put it in the book, but I've never told it publicly, and so I've never told it on air, at least. So when I was like, I think it was like 5 or 6, and my dad was like, for let me help people understand how much I knew my father was angry, and I'm like, all right, I gotta lock in. My dad, for my entire life, before this moment, after this moment, would always be like, nonviolence. We didn't believe in spankings, Martin Luther King, nonviolence, all these things. But one day he was helping me with my homework, and like, I was just not locked in. He gave me one little to the side of my face, to my cheek, and I was like, oh, he's serious. And that's the first and only time my dad's ever put his hands on me, ever. And I was like, oh, okay, you got it. Heard you, Dad. And that was it.
You did your homework ever?
Oh my God, locked in, locked in, locked in. No games.
Yeah. Well, you were good, because my mom had a belt,
Oh, my
and my
mom did
teachers
too.
had my
Yeah,
teachers had a paddle and a ruler. And when I was a kid, I'm not saying that you should be beating your kids, but I'm just saying things were different. We were built different back then.
you know,
That's all.
what I'm not saying is that I wasn't always, but I never, when I was with him, I made sure that I was focused.
On point.
I may have gotten a few more from my mother after that, but with my dad, I was laser focused, because that was like, I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
must have done something really crazy to make him mad. So yeah.
And you turned out all right. I mean, my dad actually, it was weird because my mom, she was the corporal punishment lady, but
Mhm.
my dad would. We went on vacation, and we were in a hotel, we went to Astro World in Houston,
Oh
Texas.
wow.
And so we had two adjoining rooms for the family or whatever. And I did something, I forget what I did. Maybe I talked back, or I was like swimming in the part of the pool that there was something that I did. And I wasn't listening to my mom. And my dad was like, what are you doing? And so then he took me in the other room, and he pretended that he was whipping me, and he wasn't. He was hitting the bed, and my sisters and my mom and my grandma in the other room thought that I was getting an ass whooping, and I wasn't. And then my dad like laid in bed with me. We took a nap, and then we all went out to dinner after that. And I never told anybody. My dad did not touch me. Isn't that
That's
crazy?
amazing though. That's like
Yeah.
that's see, those are the my next book is about like black male friendships and intimate relationships with like between men, and that's like the type of thing that like with fatherhood, and I talk about in my book that like my father of the silent generation would always say I love you to me and my little brother, which was like
Yeah.
different for someone of that age. But the story you just told is one, it reminds me of that, where it's like that type of softness, tenderness, thoughtfulness for a black man to have, or for, you know, that's something that is not talked about or seen enough.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Yeah, but you need dads. Thank you very much as
100%.
well. You need dads. I believe that you need dads. Look, my mom was great because my dad died and whatever. She's a single mother for a while, but my dad never whipped me, and I was never more afraid. My mom did,
Hmm.
but I was never more afraid. I was more afraid of my dad than
Mm.
someone who never touched me. So, anyways, I enjoyed speaking with you. Happy Juneteenth to you, and good luck with the book.
Thank
And
you.
when you're in New York, holler, come back on,
What's
okay?
your? I'll get your contact. I'll have Jake or someone connect.
We're still recording. I'm not going to put my
Oh,
phone number over
oh no, no.
this.
I didn't know we're still
Afterward,
recording. I didn't. My,
John Conyers III. Thank you, John. I appreciate you joining.
thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.